New York City's socialist mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani got heckled at an event with Bernie Sanders by a Cuban immigrant who bashed him for being a communist and told him to keep his disastrous ideology far away from New York City. Also, Zohran announces something astonishing but not really surprising, that one of his priorities if he gets elected will be to spend tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money on free legal representation for every illegal alien in New York City. But the Democrat hatred towards American citizens and unwavering love for illegal immigrants does not stop there. Chicago announces that they might be going back to remote learning, which had a severely devastating impact on the educational outcomes of our kids, all because they want to protect illegals who are scared to drop their kids off at school now. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is a crazy video, so make sure you watch to the end. But let's start with hearing Zohran's plan to give free legal representation to illegal immigrants.
One of the key things that we can do here in New York City is to actually start to provide legal representation to New Yorkers in detention proceedings. There are tens of thousands of New Yorkers who are in immediate danger of deportation. And City Hall has only assisted fewer than 200. Fewer than 200. And the reason is not simply an illustration of our values that we are betraying that. It's because we know that this is effective. Just the mere act of having legal representation in that proceeding increases your likelihood to go home to your family by 11-fold. 11-fold. And so one of the first priorities of my administration will be to increase funding by tens of millions of dollars to scale up this program such that we do everything in our power to ensure that immigrant New Yorkers are not living in fear across this city.
What a spit in the face to the residents of New York. This, specifically, is why I don't understand why black people vote for Democrats. It's not enough that cities like Chicago, New York, Los Angeles have gone bankrupt because they spent billions and billions of dollars on free stuff for illegals. They didn't spend it improving the well-being of the black community, which they claim is underprivileged, underserved. They close schools in black neighborhoods due to lack of funding, but then find the funding to reopen them as migrant shelters. Democrats will say the way we reduce crime and poverty in the inner cities is by prioritizing education, but ignore the help that the black kids need and instead double their classroom size, and now half the lesson plan is in Spanish. And now he wants to spend tens of millions of dollars on free legal representation, not for the black people in the community who they'll claim are underprivileged, who are victims of systemic racism and police brutality and injustice, but for people who broke into our country illegally and shouldn't even be here. But let's hear about Chicago's insane new policy, where they're saying screw the teachers, screw the parents, screw the students, we don't care if your learning is negatively impacted, all we care about is protecting the illegals.
Schools are starting to talk about teaching remotely again because the parents and the kids are afraid to show up. This isn't a positive impact on anyone. It really puts the city at a disadvantage.
It is kind of remarkable to think about schools considering going remote again. It's like going back in time to COVID times almost.
Yeah, and obviously it has a very detrimental impact on parents, on the kids, their capacities to learn, the stress on schools. They're trying to teach everyone on an equal basis. It's very difficult to do and accomplish at this point in time.
The evidence to support that remote learning had a generationally devastating impact on our children's education is abundant and well documented, and it disproportionately affected kids from poor families who might not have the home environment that allows them to focus and effectively learn. And like the guy said, what about the stress and the burden that puts on teachers, on parents? None of that matters to Democrats. They have true contempt for American people. To them, the suffering of American children is a small price to pay to make illegals feel happy and comfortable and safe. But we've seen from the trans indoctrination in schools, once you start coming for people's kids, parents get really upset and they stop caring about political correctness and niceties. Yeah, they had to deal with remote learning because we were in a pandemic. But if you're now telling parents that they have to accept their kids getting a worse education just to protect people who broke into the country and now want to avoid law enforcement, I don't think the Democrats are prepared for the kind of backlash that they'll receive. But now back to Zohran Mamdani. Here is the Cuban immigrant man calling him out to his face for being a dirty communist.
You are a communist! You will never be there! Cuba! This is not Cuba, you fool! No communism! You'll never be there! Never be there! You know that something has changed when it's not enough to call us democratic socialists anymore.
It's funny how the only people in favor of socialism are well-to-do rich liberals who get an adrenaline high from pretending to care about poor people. Anybody who comes from a communist country absolutely hates the ideology. The entire reason they escape their countries and come to America is because we're the complete opposite. Communism is tyrannical, it's oppressive, it's violent. It impoverishes entire countries and leads to mass starvation every single time. But Zohran is appealing to woke, overeducated liberals who decided to ignore the last 100 years of history and instead listen to their college professor ramble about how capitalism is evil and exploitive and socialism is wonderful, so they believe it. But even the idiots at CNN know that socialism doesn't work. Here they are calling Zohran out to his face about his absolutely moronic plan to open up government-run grocery stores.
And why is the government a better solution for a lack of grocery stores, food deserts, than just working with the private sector to have them do what they know how to do, which is run grocery stores? What's your answer to that?
There are more than 1,000 grocery stores in New York City. I'm proposing creating 5 additional ones, one in each borough of New York City that the city would run, and that would guarantee cheaper groceries, not free food, but cheaper groceries. And part of that is because food is a necessity for New Yorkers. It's a necessity for everyone. And yet it's something that people are being priced out of. And we can see the promise and the possibility of a public option. And we've seen in studies that have been done about the applicability of this in an urban setting like Chicago, that this is something we can actually deliver right here in New York City.
But there was another example in Kansas City where they had a government-run grocery store, and it's been there for years, but it's on the verge of closing because it doesn't work. They've been riddled with crime. They've dealt with just a lack of inventory. There are other examples where it just hasn't worked because, frankly, the government is not that good at being in the business of being in grocery stores.
This, in my opinion, is the scariest thing about Zohran Mamdani. I don't think he's stupid. I think he's quite intelligent. He's a good speaker. He's a good salesman. He speaks to the concerns of people, just like every con man does. I think Zohran knows socialism is destructive. He openly hates capitalism. He openly hates white people. He openly hates Western civilization. So why should I think his intentions are anything else but the intentional destruction of America's largest city, the symbol of capitalism? This is why socialism always wrecks economies, because government bureaucrats who don't have a competent bone in their body try to take over entire industries without having any knowledge or expertise. And then surprise, surprise, the government that can't even run a DMV effectively crashes something that relies on a complicated logistics network. But Zohran doesn't want to just make New York a poorer place. He wants to make it a more dangerous place. Listen to his wild response about how he would deal with the rising murder problem in New York.
Now, with the increase in shootings in Brooklyn and in the Bronx, people are now focusing on public safety. So I'm wondering, what would your public safety plan look like? Explain it to our viewers.
Absolutely. You know, prior to the West Indian Day Parade, I visited Little Caribbean, and I spoke to a number of residents in East Flatbush who were sharing their concerns around gun violence. And I met a number of New Yorkers who were part of the crisis management system, part of a cure violence approach to dealing with gun violence. And they told me how important it is to have a comprehensive approach to reducing gun violence and, frankly, rooting it out of the entirety of our city. And that it would take working with the police, working with the crisis management system, working with a cure violence approach, all of these things to deliver that safety. And then I went to the Bronx just a few days ago, and I met with a program called Guns Down, Life Up. And this is a program based in Lincoln Hospital. And one of the young men I met, he had actually been attacked and was in Lincoln Hospital, and he was thinking about retaliating. And that's when he learned about this program. They recruited him to join the program. And instead of another act of violence, he's instead now a mentor to others who have just gone through that same process.
More magical social programs, more youth mentorship. We can't arrest these criminals. That would be cruel and racist. The law-abiding residents must endure more chaos and violence, while we open up more after-school programs that none of these kids are going to attend because they're not troubled youth. They're literal killers. Democrats believe everybody can be reformed and should get unlimited chances to do so. That's why you get a situation like what happened in Charlotte, where some insane black guy just pulls out a knife and stabs a girl in her neck to death on the train for nothing. The guy had been in jail 11 times for previous violent acts. The stats show that the average murderer has been arrested 7 times before they murder somebody. But because Democrats have completely disregarded law-abiding, legal American citizens as people they should be concerned about, all of their compassion and empathy goes towards criminals and illegal aliens. They think they're so sophisticated and insightful that they can create this nuanced approach to solving crime rather than the most obvious and effective option, which is to be tough on crime and arrest people. They're willing to let law-abiding citizens die in the name of virtue signaling, just like they're willing to let American children fall behind educationally just to protect illegal immigrants. But now about these hard-working, essential illegal immigrants who are actually more American than you and I, here's the bonus clip I promised you of a family of illegals trying to assimilate into American life. You guys are gonna roll out of your chair laughing at this one. Now, the reason I showed you guys that was to not try and be intentionally racist. It's to highlight the stark, dramatic difference in the American way of life and all these other places where we import people by the millions. If escalators are giving these people a problem, how can you reasonably expect them to assimilate into our culture, into our tradition, learn our language, understand the concept of rule of law, of polite, civilized, generous, communal living? It's once again the Democrats' naive belief that every single person can be reformed. If you're from a place where child brides are normal, or having sex with animals is normal, where stealing and killing is normal, where these behaviors are ingrained in you to be useful and beneficial because you're in a state of constant survival, you're not just gonna forget all of that and change simply because now you're in America. You think if these people can't figure out the escalator, they'll figure out how to be productive, contributing members of society? Or do you think they'll be lifelong government dependents? But the Democrats imported these people in by the millions. They told us it was racist to expect them to assimilate. They paid for every aspect of their life with taxpayer money. And now, like Zohran said, you're also going to be paying for their legal representation for them to stay. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on those notification bells so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.